Hey, good morning, Cupies. Good afternoon, Cupies. How's it going today? This is our first mini lesson on the history of psychology, giving you some background information so you can move forward with your study of modern psychology. Okay, before we talk about that modern stuff, let's look at a definition of psychology. It is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. Okay, scientific study. That's the scientific method, okay, using science. Observable behaviors, those are things that you can see, like I am talking with my hands right now. Those are things you can see. Mental processes, those are things you can't see with the naked eye, but using tools like an EEG or a PET scan, you can see in the mind or in the brain and try to help understand why people are maybe thinking certain things or doing certain behaviors based on what you see in these scans. So those are tools that we'll actually talk about in a later time. But I just want to go over with you quickly. Our definition is the scientific study of observable behavior and mental processes. And psychology didn't start out that way. Okay, it didn't start out with that definition. Okay, it started out as a philosophy thousands of years ago. And thousands of years ago, you had this debate. It is the nature-nurture debate. It is a debate that started thousands of years ago and still exists today. So what is this debate? What does it mean? So how do we explain behaviors? Is it nature? Do we explain someone's behaviors by how they were born? They're born with genetics. They inherit certain traits. Is it biology? Is it in their DNA? Or is it nurture? Is it how they were raised? Is it the experiences in which they had as they grow up? The learning experiences, what they've learned, is that playing a larger role in explaining their behaviors? Okay? Or is it a combination of both? Okay? Is it one, the other, or a little bit of both? There's really no right or wrong answer here. It's what you can explain the best with information to back it up. Okay, with facts and data to be able to back that up. So going throughout this, our discussion of psychology through the whole semester, this debate's going to come up again and again and again, especially in our development unit. So it's something to think about, as it's at the root of psychology. As we go back in our history books and thinking about world history, the Greeks played a large role in some of the development of psychology and the advancements of psychology. But at this time, psychology was more of a philosophy. The philosophers of ancient Greek, if you've got Socrates, Aristotle, you've got Plato, and they're the ones who are responsible for starting like the questioning of the mind and questioning of behaviors. This didn't set right with a lot of people at this time. However, this is the beginning of psychology. Asking questions about the mind, the body. Are they related? Are they separate? Are they influencing one or the other? Are we born with a blank slate, meaning experiences? That would be Aristotle. Or is it like Plato? Is that, we're born a certain way, so that is what's going to influence our behaviors. Nature versus nurture. Existed with the Greeks, and it continues again to today. So let's fast forward, though, a couple hundred years or thousands of years to the history and roots within the Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, what I'm talking about is in Europe. During this time period, what was the major power force behind people's lives? The church, yes, it was the Catholic Church. So the church played a large role in people's lives and helped to explain people's behaviors. So if somebody wasn't behaving in a normal way or was acting, erratically, they had different type of thinking, mentally they were unstable. It was explained by the church that there must be some type of demonic possession. So in order to help this person, we have to help release this demon from the individual. One of the ways in which they did that is looking at this picture here is this trepanation. So trepanation, they would use a tool to drill a hole into the skull, exposing the brain to be able to allow the release of this demonic possession. It sounds a little hokey, I know, and to drill a hole in someone's skull at any time. I mean, Middle Ages, yeah, but even today, that is not something to be done lightly and taken lightly. But during this time of the Middle Ages, it was a very dangerous procedure, and people did die, yes, and they moved on to the next patient. Asylums were also began around this time period. Asylums are where people were taken they were subjected to horrible treatment, inhumane treatment, and they were forced to live their lives there, and they received treatment to be able to help them recover from the instabilities in which that they were experiencing. But a lot of times those recoveries didn't happen. It was falsified by many documents, and people just didn't get any better. Okay. What time period though comes after the Middle Ages? So right here, psychology is still kind of moving from a philosophy here to more now with the scientific revolution, enlightenment as a science. Okay. Scientific revolution helps to modernize psychology, or begin the modernization of psychology, with René Descartes and John Locke. Okay. René Descartes believed that there is an innate, inborn influence to our behaviors. John Locke, instead, it was more nurture, that our experiences continue to help shape us and mold us to who we are and influence our behaviors. So again, this nature-nurture debate continues throughout the scientific revolution. And again, like I said, it continues throughout modern time. Okay, let's go ahead and look at some of the pioneers in psychology. You'll be reading about them in your textbooks, some in the first chapter, others later. These people will come up again and again and again and again. You have Wilhelm Wundt and E.B. Teichner. They work together. William James. Sigmund Freud is probably a name that you have heard of numerous times, many, many times. And then you got James Watson. Many of you probably think that it's Sigmund Freud is, oh, that's the father of psychology. He knows it all. That's where it all began. But that's false. Psychology actually, yes, it began as a philosophy of the Greeks, but if you think about a more modern version of psychology, it's Wilhelm Wundt. So Wilhelm Wundt, he is the father of psychology. He opened up the first psychology laboratory in Germany. He wanted to study the conscious experience and what's going on in your mind as a conscious experience as you perform a task, as you listen to a melody, as you eat a piece of chocolate. You are to explain what it is that you're feeling. That has a specific term that you're doing here, and a specific term called introspection. Okay, so introspection, that's a term that means like looking inward, explaining what's going on in the brain as you're performing, or in your mind as you're performing a task. And Wundt and Teichner would record that. Okay, what problems do you see with this is that where's the scientific method in this? Where is the science involved? Yes, you're recording the observations of what people say, but they can say whatever they want. It doesn't have to be real and truthful. Okay, so that's where the problem with the structuralist viewpoint, the structure of the mind, the conscious experience comes into falsely here. Many people disagree with this outlook. So you have another guy who was involved with psychology, and that is functionalist approach, William James. William James wrote the first psychology textbook, and he was more interested in the function of the brain and how the brain can function in different environments. Okay, so as we move from environment to environment, how our brain is able to adapt, and it's able to help us survive. So that conscious experience, how does it help function in different settings? And he explained a lot of his principles in the first psychology textbook that was written in 1890, The Principles of Psychology. So in this, he's able to explain how the mind is going to adapt. But again, think about it. Can we see this going on? Okay, no. So that's where you have the behaviorists of John Watson and Ivan Pavlov. Okay, they're behaviorists who think about, well, those things we can't see going on, so we're not going to study that. Instead, we can see observable behaviors, overt behaviors I can see with the eyes. That's what I'm going to study. Rewards, punishments, how does that influence behavior? Okay, if you get, if you get a ticket every time that you're speeding, are you going to continue to speed? Probably not, because you don't want to pay that fine all the time. Okay, so speeding tickets can act as a punishment, okay, and try to deter your behaviors. Okay, but we'll go into the effectiveness of those later, because I'm sure, people who get a lot of tickets still speed. Okay, but when you think about maybe your cell phone's taken away if you are not behaving appropriately, or if you didn't unload the dishwasher, you came in late from your curfew, you get the stuff taken away, your card taken away, those are punishments. How does that impact your behavior? So people like John Watson, Ivan Pavlov studied the behaviorists, or studied the observable behaviors with psychology. Okay, moving on to Max Wertheimer and Gestalt. So Gestalt, this type of psychology is that they're looking at the whole person. Rather than looking at small individual parts, they're looking at the whole individual person, a whole individual explanation. And if there are holes missing in things, like you see these images, there are some holes here, your brain will fill in these gaps. That's kind of like what Gestalt is that the small parts, we're putting those together to make something whole. Individual music notes don't make a song, but when you put them together, it does. So the whole is different from the sum of its parts. They're studying whole objects, whole perceived objects. Okay. Give you a second. What do you see here? Okay. It's supposed to be a Dalmatian. So this is the head of the Dalmatian. I'm looking down the ground, and this is the legs. As the body comes back, there's a hind legs and so forth. So Gestalt would have you, filling in those gaps. Okay. Again, for time's sake, we're going to speed forward. You have a saxophone or woman's face, and then there's a cow. Okay. So filling in those gaps, so can we see objects as a whole. Lastly, of our history here, we're going to stop with Sigmund Freud. So Sigmund Freud, the psychoanalytic theory of psychology, which later is called psychodynamic. So Sigmund Freud believed that you've got the tip of the iceberg here. This is what we can study here is the conscious mind, then you have the subconscious and unconscious mind. What's down in here, our deep reservoir here below the surface, that's what's driving our behaviors. Those unconscious motives, things that we're not aware of consciously, and because it's in the unconscious, that's what's driving our behaviors. Maybe it's something that happened in our childhood many, many, many years ago that I'm not aware of, but it's back here in my mind somewhere, and that's what's driving me to behave in a certain way. Maybe I don't like certain things, or I have this certain type of habit. That's because of what happened in my childhood. Okay, what happened many years ago. So the unconscious thoughts, memories, desires, those things that are well below the surface, again, that is what's driving our behavior. Psychoanalysis has moved to, again, a psychodynamic theory. So originally it was psychoanalytic, now it's psychodynamic. Sigmund Freud, we're going to talk about him again and again and again and again. All of these perspectives that we talk about in this unit are going to come up with every single unit of study, because there's explanations in every unit of study for people's behaviors based on certain perspectives or certain schools of thought. Okay, so what you're going to do now after any review that you need to of the history of psychology is I would briefly go through your textbook in that first module to study some of this, reread back through there to look at structuralism, look at functionalism, psychoanalysis, to get a little bit more background information in your textbooks. And then you're going to move forward and do a small activity on the modern perspectives. There's a video clip that I have you watch about public speaking, taking some notes on a graphic organizer. All of this can be found in Schoology. You'll take some notes, you'll apply some of these perspectives, and you'll get some practice with it. And then we'll zoom in to see if you have any questions about things. I'll have another video for you to kind of go over some of those ideas, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with the perspectives, because that really sets the foundation of our units of study this semester. Making sure that you understand those foundational aspects of our perspectives. We can't move forward if you don't understand those. You got to keep coming back to those and reviewing that information. Okay. So this is it for today, or at least for this little mini lesson. You do have some stuff to do after this. Again, going on to Schoology, learning about the modern perspectives, watching that short YouTube clip on public speaking, and applying the modern perspectives of psychology. Okay, Cupies, thanks for listening today. There'll be more of this coming up. Have a good one.